At my son Liam's funeral, a day of unbearable grief, his wife Seraphina faked tears. Then I overheard her whisper, "Finally, I'll have everything. And that old woman will suffer." My heart stopped. I just smiled faintly. But a chilling resolve ignited within me. You won't believe what happens next. Like, share, and let us know where you're listening from. The rain was a cold, insistent drizzle, mirroring the tears that streamed down Elara's face. Each drop felt like a tiny hammer blow against her already shattered spirit. Today, she was burying her only son, Liam, snatched away at just 47 years old by a sudden, cruel illness. The grief was a physical weight, a crushing pain in her chest that made breathing feel like a monumental effort. Her world had ended the moment the doctor had delivered the news, and now, standing by the open grave, she felt a hollowness that seemed to consume her from the inside out. Beside her, Seraphina, Liam's wife of 8 years, stood perfectly poised under a black umbrella. Her designer suit was immaculate, her hair styled with precision even in the damp air. Seraphina's shoulders shook with what looked like sobs, but Elara watched her, a knot of old resentment tightening in her stomach. The sounds Seraphina made were too polished, too consistent. They were theatrical sobs, Elara thought, a performance for the benefit of the gathered mourners. They certainly did not fool her. Elara had known Liam since the day he was born. She knew real grief, and Seraphina's was not it. When it was her turn, Elara stepped forward, her legs feeling like lead. She held a single white rose, its petals beaded with rainwater. As she reached the edge of the grave, she leaned over the dark wood of Liam's casket. "Goodbye, my sweet boy," she whispered, her voice cracking, barely audible above the drumming rain. A tear escaped and mingled with the rainwater on the rose. "Mama loves you." She gently placed the rose on the lid, watching it rest there, a stark symbol of purity against the finality of death. This was her Liam, her gentle, loving son. How could he be gone? The service concluded, and mourners began to disperse, their hushed condolences fading into the distant murmur of traffic. Elara lingered, unable to pull herself away from the spot where Liam would soon be laid to rest. She watched as Seraphina moved away, her arm linked with a woman Elara vaguely recognized as Chloe, a friend of Seraphina's. They stopped a few feet from Elara, seemingly thinking they were out of earshot amidst the general exodus. Then, Elara heard Seraphina's voice, sharp and clear, cutting through the damp air. "Finally," Seraphina said, a note of undisguised triumph in her tone. Elara's breath hitched. "Once the will is read, I'll have everything." Elara froze, her mind struggling to process the words. Everything? What was Seraphina talking about? Hadn't Liam left her well provided for? A cold dread began to seep into her bones, replacing the warmth of her grief with something far more sinister. Seraphina continued, her voice dropping slightly, but still audible in the quiet aftermath of the funeral. As she spoke, Elara could see Seraphina's profile, her mouth twisting into a grotesque sneer. "That old woman will suffer in my hands. I've waited long enough." The words hit Elara like a physical blow. The air rushed from her lungs. That old woman. There was no mistaking who Seraphina meant. Her knees buckled, and she staggered, gripping the arm of a nearby chair to steady herself. The elegant facade Seraphina had worn for years, the polite smiles, the carefully curated gestures of affection toward Liam's mother, they all shattered in that single, hateful sentence. This was the real Seraphina, raw and cruel, her true nature finally exposed in the most public and unforgivable of moments. Suddenly, 1,000 small moments of unease clicked into place. The forgotten invitations to family gatherings that Elara had been sure she'd sent, the way her framed photographs with Liam had slowly disappeared from their living room mantelpiece, replaced by Seraphina's own family pictures. The carefully planned holidays where Elara was always conveniently excluded, always told at the last minute. Elara had dismissed them all, telling herself she was an oversensitive mother, imagining slights where none existed. She had chided herself for her lingering suspicion, her protective instinct for Liam that sometimes chafed against his wife. She had wanted to believe Seraphina loved Liam, and by extension, accepted her. Liam had always said Seraphina adored her, but the raw hatred in Seraphina's voice was undeniable now, a venomous truth that sliced through all of Elara's self-deception. This wasn't imagination. This was real, and it was aimed directly at her. Pastor Richards, a kind man with a gentle demeanor, approached Elara, his brow furrowed with concern. "Mrs. Davies, are you all right?" he asked, extending a comforting hand. "The grief must be overwhelming. Let me offer you a ride home." He mistook her shock, the terror and burgeoning fury, for intensified grief. Elara could only nod, mute, unable to form words, her mind reeling. As the pastor drove her away from the cemetery, Elara's mind replayed Liam's face, his kind, concerned eyes. From a conversation years ago, she had tried, ever so gently, to voice her unease about Seraphina. "Liam," she had begun. "Sometimes I feel Seraphina resents me, like she wants to push me away." Liam's reaction had been immediate. His brow furrowed with disbelief. "Mom, you're imagining things. Seraphina loves you. She wouldn't do anything like that." He had dismissed her fears, his blind loyalty to his wife unwavering. The memory now twisted into a new, sharper pain, knowing he had been so wrong, and that she hadn't pressed harder. Back at her quiet home, her sister Beatrice was waiting. Beatrice rushed to her, embracing her tightly. "Oh, Elara, my poor dear," she murmured, stroking Elara's hair. "How are you holding up?" But Elara was lost in a fog. The heavy cloak of grief was now interwoven with a chilling dread. Seraphina's twisted face, her triumphant voice, her cruel threat, they echoed relentlessly in Elara's head. The sorrow for Liam was still immense, but something else had awakened in her. A cold, hard kernel of resolve. She wasn't just grieving anymore. She was being threatened, and she knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that she would not suffer in silence. 2 weeks crawled by, each day a struggle for Elara. The raw grief for Liam was still a constant companion, but now it was tinged with a cold, simmering anger, fueled by Seraphina's chilling words at the funeral. Today was the day of the will reading, a day Elara had dreaded but also anticipated with a strange sense of resolve. Dressed in a simple, dark dress, she drove to Mr. Albright's law office, her hands gripping the steering wheel, her knuckles white. She was determined to face Seraphina with every ounce of dignity she could muster. She repeated a silent mantra to herself. "I have survived losing my beloved husband. I have survived losing my only child. Seraphina can take nothing more of consequence from me." This thought, grim as it was, gave her a sliver of strength. The law office waiting room was hushed, the air thick with anticipation. Elara was the first to arrive, taking a seat on a plush leather chair. Moments later, Seraphina swept in, impeccably dressed as always, but with a restless energy that betrayed her impatience. She barely acknowledged Elara, instead immediately checking her watch with a huff. "I don't see why we needed Liam's mother-in-law here," Seraphina stated, her voice tight with irritation, addressing the empty air rather than Elara directly. "She has nothing to do with our estate." Before Elara could respond, Mr. Albright, a man with a kind face and a neatly trimmed gray beard, entered the room. "Good morning, Mrs. Wallace, Mrs. Davies." He offered Elara a sympathetic smile. He then turned to Seraphina, his tone gentle but firm. "Mrs. Wallace, your husband specifically requested Mrs. Davies' presence for this reading." Seraphina's lips pressed into a thin line, but she said nothing more. Just then, the door opened again. Marcus, Liam's longtime business partner, entered, followed by Miss Holloway, Liam's efficient and loyal personal assistant. Both offered Elara warm, heartfelt condolences, their genuine sorrow, a stark contrast to Seraphina's practiced indifference. They took their seats, and a heavy silence settled over the room. Mr. Albright cleared his throat, adjusting his spectacles. "Before we proceed with the formal reading of Mr. Davies' last will and testament," he began, "I have been instructed to play a recording. This is a personal message from Liam himself. He pressed a button on a small recorder on his desk. A moment of static, then Liam's familiar voice filled the room. "If you're hearing this, then I'm gone." Elara's heart seized in her chest. The sound of his voice, so clear and real, brought fresh tears streaming down her face. It was as if he were still there, speaking directly to her. Liam's voice softened first. "Mom," he said, his tone thick with emotion. "I know this is hard. I love you, and I am so sorry for everything." Elara sobbed quietly, covering her mouth with her hand. "Marcus, thank you for your unwavering partnership. You were more than a colleague. You were a brother. And Miss Holloway, your loyalty and dedication never went unnoticed. I truly appreciate you." Marcus nodded, his eyes glistening, while Miss Holloway dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Then, Liam's voice hardened, the change abrupt and chilling. It was directed at Seraphina. "And Seraphina, my wife." The air in the room seemed to crackle with tension. "I've known for over a year about your affair with Derek." Seraphina's face, which had been impassive just moments before, drained of all color. Her mouth fell open slightly, a choked gasp escaping her lips. She stared at the recorder, then at Mr. Albright, then back at the recorder, as if it were a ghost. Liam's voice continued, relentless. "I saw your texts, Seraphina. I saw your calls. I knew about your plans for after I was gone, how you intended to move on, quickly, and with his help." Elara sat frozen, a strange mix of shock and morbid fascination gripping her. "I also knew," Liam continued, his voice laced with a deep sadness, "how you treated my mother. The accidentally deleted messages she never received, the cruel comments you made about her behind her back, thinking I wouldn't hear, the attempts to isolate her from my life, from our family holidays, from her own son." Elara felt a jolt. He knew. He knew everything. Every slight she had dismissed, every suspicion she had called herself oversensitive for he had seen them. Liam had known Seraphina's true nature all along. The realization was overwhelming. A painful vindication. Given these facts, Liam's voice concluded, firm and unwavering. "I made significant changes to my will. Changes that reflect the truth of our relationship, not the facade you've maintained." Mr. Albright paused the recording. The silence that followed was deafening. He then picked up a stack of papers. "Accordingly," he stated, his voice calm, "the revised will leaves Liam's house, which was his childhood home, to his mother, Elara Davies." Elara gasped, a hand flying to her mouth. "His shares in his firm, Davies and Associates," Mr. Albright continued, "are bequeathed to Marcus, with a provision that a portion of the dividends from those shares will be paid to Mrs. Davies for the remainder of her lifetime. His personal investments and savings are also bequeathed to Mrs. Davies." Seraphina's breath was coming in ragged gasps. "As for Mrs. Wallace," Mr. Albright said, looking directly at Seraphina, "due to the infidelity clause in your prenuptial agreement, which Mr. Astistaya Davies had ample evidence to support, you are entitled to a settlement of $50,000. That is all." The moment Mr. Albright finished speaking, Seraphina exploded. She leaped from her chair, her face contorted in disbelief and fury. "This is absurd!" she shrieked, her voice echoing in the quiet office. "I'll contest it. He can't do this." Mr. Albright remained perfectly calm. "Mrs. Wallace," he said, adjusting his glasses, "you are free to contest the will. However, I must warn you that doing so would make all of Liam's collected evidence regarding your affair and your conduct toward his mother public record. This includes the full transcripts of texts, call logs, and eyewitness accounts." Seraphina's rage faltered, replaced by a sudden, sickening realization. Her eyes darted around the room, then landed on Elara. Her expression shifted, morphing into one of desperate pleading. "Elara, please," she begged, her voice now thin and reedy. "You know this isn't right. We were family. I made mistakes, yes, but I loved Liam. You know that. Please. I'm begging you." Elara met Seraphina's gaze, her own eyes cold and unwavering. "You were planning my suffering. Elara stated quietly, her voice devoid of emotion, while standing at my son's grave. Seraphina blanched, her face paling further as she feigned misunderstanding. "I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, but her eyes betrayed her. Mr. Albright intervened smoothly. "Mrs. Wallace, I suggest you take some time to process this information. My assistant will be in touch regarding the settlement." Seraphina's face twisted back into a mask of pure fury. She glared at Elara, then at Marcus and Miss Holloway, before spinning on her heel. "This isn't over," she hissed, storming out of the office, the door slamming shut behind her. After a few moments of tense silence, Mr. Albright stood. He approached Elara and handed her a sealed, plain envelope. "Liam asked that you read this privately, Mrs. Davies," he said, his voice gentle once more. Elara took the envelope, her fingers trembling slightly. She knew, even before opening it, that this was Liam's final message, a last chance for her to truly understand. The morning after the will reading, Elara woke feeling a strange mix of emotions. The grief for Liam was still a dull ache, but it was overshadowed by the shock of Seraphina's exposure and the unexpected weight of her new inheritance. Liam's final, private message was still clutched in her hand. She sat up in bed, the sun streaming through her window, and opened the sealed envelope. She began to read, Liam's familiar handwriting bringing a fresh wave of emotion. "Mom," the letter started. "If you're reading this, then you know the truth about Seraphina. I'm sorry I didn't confront her while I was alive. I was a coward, and because of that, you suffered in silence." Elara's heart ached, but a sense of understanding washed over her. Liam wrote that his suspicions had begun almost 3 years ago. He had noticed Elara's visits becoming less frequent, and Seraphina always had an excuse. "She'd forget to give you my messages or hide photos of us together. I thought I was imagining things, too," Liam confessed in the letter. He had dismissed his own gut feelings, just as Elara had dismissed hers. Then, about 1.5 years ago, he had stumbled upon messages between Seraphina and a man named Derek. He remembered confronting Seraphina then, her tears, her passionate denials, her vows that it was just flirting and it was over. Believing her, he had given her another chance, but something in her eyes, a flicker of something he couldn't quite place, had made him wary. He had decided to install hidden cameras in his home and office, just to be sure. The footage, Liam wrote, confirmed everything. Not only was the affair with Derek still ongoing, but Seraphina's true feelings about Elara were laid bare. He had heard her refer to his mother as the old lady, and heard her speak to Derek about her plans to take everything after his death. He had seen her cold indifference, her calculating nature. The pain of betrayal must have been immense for Liam. Liam explained why he had structured his will the way he did. "Mom, I left you the house," he wrote, referring to his childhood home, "because it was built with Dad's money, and you deserve to live there, secure and comfortable, after everything you've sacrificed for me. The firm's shares and investments are for your future, to ensure you never have to worry. It's the least I could do, considering what I put you through by not acting sooner." Tears streamed down Elara's face again, but these were different. They weren't tears of desperate grief or confusion. They were tears of understanding, of a quiet, profound love, knowing her son had truly seen her, had understood her pain, and had protected her even in death. He wasn't a coward. He was a silent protector. Just as Elara finished the letter, the doorbell rang, startling her. She peered through the peephole. It was Seraphina, looking utterly disheveled, her face tear-streaked, her hair a mess. Against her better judgment, a flicker of something, perhaps curiosity or a residual maternal concern for the woman Liam had loved, made Elara unlatch the door. "Elara, please," Seraphina begged, her voice raw. "I need to talk to you." Elara stepped aside, letting Seraphina enter the living room. Seraphina immediately launched into a performance, her voice laced with false sincerity. "This is all a misunderstanding." Liam was confused, manipulated. That assistant of his, Miss Holloway, she never liked me. She probably poisoned his mind. Seraphina dropped to her knees, taking Elara's hands, her touch clammy and cold. The affair? It was just flirting. Meaningless. And I was just jealous of your closeness with Liam. Every wife feels that way, don't they? Elara pulled her hands away, her expression unreadable. She saw through every single lie. The tears were for herself, for her lost future, not for Liam. What do you want, Seraphina? Elara asked, her voice firm and steady, refusing to be drawn into the theatrics. Seraphina paused, sensing the futility of her emotional appeal. Her eyes hardened slightly. I want to honor what Liam would have really wanted, she said, emphasizing really. The implication was clear. She wanted Liam's house, his money. You have your own place, Elara. You don't need Liam's house. Elara looked at her calmly. Liam was very clear about his wishes, Seraphina. You heard the recording. You heard the will. Seraphina's mask dropped completely. Her face twisted into an expression of pure entitlement and anger. He was on heavy medication at the end. She practically shrieked. He was in pain, confused. The will isn't valid. His will was changed 8 months ago. Seraphina. Elara corrected her, her voice cutting through Seraphina's flimsy excuse. Before his diagnosis, before any medication, the air crackled with hostility. Seraphina abandoned all pretense. Fine, she snarled, standing up, hands on her hips. How much time do I have to move out? 30 days, Elara replied coolly. As per the legal agreement for a tenant. Seraphina snatched her purse from the sofa, her eyes blazed with fury. This isn't over, Elara, she threatened, her voice a low hiss. You think you've won, but you haven't. I was with Liam for 8 years. I have rights. Elara stood her ground, unmoving. You have 30 days, she retorted, her voice equally cold. And Seraphina? I've already changed the locks on the house. Don't bother using your key. Seraphina's jaw dropped. She stood for a moment, gaping, before her face contorted in a silent scream of rage. She spun around and stormed out of the house, slamming the front door with such force that a picture frame on the wall rattled. Elara let out a slow breath. The confrontation had drained her, but she felt a strange sense of empowerment. Just as she was about to sit down, her phone rang. It was Marcus. Elara, he said, his voice urgent. I've been going through Liam's firm finances. There are some irregularities. It looks like Seraphina may have been embezzling funds for a while now. A cold dread settled in Elara's stomach. This was worse than she thought. I'll be right there, she told Marcus. She immediately drove to Liam's house, the house that was now hers. When she arrived, the front door was ajar, a clear sign of forced entry. Inside, Liam's study was ransacked, papers strewn everywhere. The small, wall-mounted safe, where Liam kept important documents and some valuables, was open and empty. Seraphina had already been there. As Elara stood amidst the mess, her phone buzzed with an incoming message. An anonymous text. You'll regret this, old woman. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Elara felt a chill creep down her spine. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was personal. The morning after the ransacking, Elara arrived at Liam's house, now officially hers, not alone. She had gathered her own small army. Her sister Beatrice, ever dependable, was there. Her brother-in-law, George, a man of quiet strength, accompanied them. Marcus, Liam's business partner, and Miss Holloway, Liam's sharp and loyal personal assistant, completed the group. The sense of collective purpose, of standing together against Seraphina's malice, gave Elara a much-needed lift. They entered the house carefully. The mess in Liam's study was even worse than Elara remembered. Papers, books, and scattered office supplies were strewn across the floor, evidence of Seraphina's frantic search. Miss Holloway surveyed the chaos with a grim expression. This is worse than I thought, she stated, her voice tight. She wasn't just looking for valuables. She was looking for something specific, something that would incriminate her. Marcus, his jaw set, nodded in agreement. The backups, he muttered. Liam kept records of everything. If she was embezzling from the firm, he would have documented it. He was meticulous. Miss Holloway patted the large satchel slung over her shoulder. He did, she confirmed, a triumphant glint in her eye. That's why I brought this. Before Liam got sicker, he gave me copies of everything for safekeeping. Financial records, security footage from the house, emails, all of it. He trusted me implicitly. Elara felt a rush of profound gratitude for these people. They were not just protecting Liam's legacy, they were protecting her. They were standing by her side, a testament to Liam's good judgment in choosing his allies. George, ever practical, spoke up. First, let's secure the house. We need to get the locks changed immediately, and maybe even look into a temporary security system. Then we can properly assess what's missing and begin to organize this mess. Everyone agreed, and they set to work, each person taking on a task. While the others systematically went through the study, meticulously picking up papers and cataloging what had been disturbed, Elara found herself drifting towards Liam's bedroom. Seraphina had clearly cleared out her own belongings in a hurry, leaving behind an almost sterile emptiness. Yet, oddly, on the bedside table, the framed wedding photo of Liam and Seraphina remained. A strange oversight, Elara thought. Or perhaps a deliberate act of spite, a reminder of what Seraphina believed she had lost. Elara's gaze then fell upon something tucked away beneath the bed. A simple cardboard box, covered in dust, with Liam's familiar, neat handwriting scrawled across the top. Mom, her heart gave a painful lurch. She knelt, pulling the box out gently, as if it were a fragile treasure. Inside, carefully wrapped in tissue paper, were cherished mementos from Liam's life. His small clay handprint from kindergarten, still perfectly preserved. A Father's Day card he had made for his dad, complete with crayon drawings and misspelled words, a relic from a happier time. Old, faded family photographs. Liam, as a mischievous toddler, a gangly teenager, a proud graduate. Elara felt a wave of bittersweet nostalgia wash over her. At the very bottom of the box, beneath layers of treasured memories, Elara found a slim, leather-bound journal. The cover was worn, and she recognized Liam's distinctive handwriting on the first page. It was his diary. She hesitated for a moment, feeling as though she were intruding on his most private thoughts, but a powerful urge to understand pushed her to open it. The entries spanned several years, detailing Liam's observations of Seraphina's manipulative cruelty. He wrote about her feigned headaches and sudden illnesses that conveniently coincided with planned dinners with Elara. He documented the time he found Elara's birthday card, still sealed, in the kitchen trash can, an untouched symbol of Seraphina's deliberate disregard. He noted how Elara was always deliberately seated far away at Christmas dinners, isolated from him and the main conversations. Each entry was a painful confirmation of Elara's own suppressed anxieties. Liam's handwriting grew more frantic in later entries, documenting his growing suspicions about Seraphina's true character and his deep guilt at not confronting her directly. He chastised himself for his blindness, for allowing his mother to be hurt. The journal was a chronicle of his quiet suffering, a burden he had carried in silence, just as Elara had carried hers. The final entry, dated just weeks before his shocking diagnosis, hit Elara like a punch to the gut. "I've been a coward," Liam had written, his words revealing a desperate self-reproach. "I've watched Seraphina hurt my mother for years, always making excuses for her, always believing her lies, but I can't do it anymore. I need to fix this. If anything happens to me, I need to make sure Mom is protected. She deserves peace, not this constant battle." Tears blurred Elara's vision. They were no longer tears of pain or confusion, but tears of profound understanding and love. Liam had known. He had seen everything. He had felt her pain and had planned to make things right, to protect her, before his unexpected illness had stolen him away. The knowledge brought a strange sense of comfort, a quiet validation that transcended even death. Her son had been a protector, even if he believed himself a coward. He had done what he could, and in his final act, he had ensured her safety. Beatrice found Elara in Liam's bedroom, still sitting on the floor, the open journal clutched in her hands, tears silently tracing paths down her cheeks. "Elara?" "Are you all right?" Beatrice asked, her voice filled with concern. Elara slowly looked up, her eyes red-rimmed but holding a newfound clarity. She simply held out the cardboard box and the journal. Beatrice sat beside her, taking the journal. As she read Liam's agonizing entries, her expression hardened. "That witch?" she muttered, her voice low and furious. "If I'd known half of this, I would have dragged her out of here myself." Elara wiped her eyes. "I didn't want anyone to know," she admitted, her voice hoarse. "I thought I was just being oversensitive, that it was my fault somehow, that I was the difficult mother-in-law." Beatrice squeezed Elara's hand firmly. "No, Elara. It was never your fault, not a single bit of it." The simple affirmation brought another fresh wave of tears, but this time, they were cleansing. Together, they carried the box downstairs. George had secured the back door, and Marcus and Miss Holloway were hunched over Marcus's laptop in the study, a stack of printouts beside them. The air was thick with a sense of grim determination. Marcus looked up as Elara and Beatrice entered. "We found something significant," he announced, his voice tight. "Seraphina transferred $75,000 from one of Liam's business accounts to her personal account 3 weeks ago, right after he went into hospice." Elara felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. Even as Liam lay dying, Seraphina had been stealing from him, Miss Holloway added to the grim tally. "And there's more. I found these in the documents Liam gave me." She spread several credit card statements across the cluttered desk. Elara's eyes scanned them, seeing the exorbitant charges. Luxury shopping sprees, expensive hotel stays in exotic locations, and then a pattern of repeated charges at a specific downtown hotel, dating back more than a year. Elara stated quietly, her voice devoid of surprise. She was meeting someone. Miss Holloway nodded. "Derek Mercer. Liam hired a private investigator last year after he found the first messages. This confirms the affair was continuous and extensive." She tapped the printouts of the PI report. Elara sank into a nearby chair, the weight of the revelations pressing down on her. The depth of Seraphina's betrayal was staggering. Not just the quiet cruelty and emotional manipulation while Liam was alive, but outright deceit, embezzlement, and a calculated attempt to take everything Liam had after his death. It was a cold, ruthless scheme, meticulously planned. Marcus looked grim. "We have more than enough for criminal charges, Elara. Embezzlement, at a minimum. Fraud, maybe." Elara's stomach churned at the thought. A public scandal, splashed across headlines, detailing Seraphina's treachery. It would inevitably involve Liam's name, his firm. She didn't want his memory tarnished by such a scandal, not after everything he had done to protect her. "I don't want his memory tarnished by scandal," she stated, her voice barely a whisper. Miss Holloway, ever pragmatic, stepped forward. "I understand, Mrs. Davies, but there might be an alternative. We confront Seraphina with everything we know, the financial records, the security footage of her in the house after you left, the PI reports, Liam's journal entry detailing her behavior. We offer her a deal. She walks away quietly, signs whatever documents Mr. Albright prepares to relinquish any further claim to Liam's estate, and we don't press charges." Elara considered this. It echoed Liam's own struggle to confront Seraphina, his desire to protect his family's peace. This approach would allow her to reclaim Liam's legacy, without dragging his name through the mud. It was a way to exact justice, not revenge, and to protect his memory. Marcus's mouth twisted into a cold, hard smile. "She'll agree to it, Elara. She will when she sees what we have." That night, Elara stayed alone in the house. Beatrice and George had insisted on staying with her, but she had gently declined. She needed to be here, in Liam's home, to feel his presence. She wandered from room to room, touching his books, running her hand over the smooth wood of his desk, seeing his life in every detail. It was in these quiet moments that she felt a quiet determination, a deep sense of purpose solidify within her. She clutched Liam's journal to her chest, his last words echoing in her mind, his promise to protect her. Now it was her turn. She made a silent promise to him. She would reclaim his home, protect his legacy, and she would be strong. not just for herself, but for him. She would ensure Seraphina paid the price for her cruel deceptions, but in a way that honored Liam, not shamed him. The battle was not over, but Elara felt ready. The clock on the mantelpiece in Elara's living room ticked towards noon, the hour set for the confrontation at Mr. Albright's office. Elara stood before the mirror, scrutinizing her reflection. She had chosen a simple navy dress, one Liam had always complimented, and had styled her silver hair meticulously. Today, she needed to feel strong. Not outwardly aggressive, but inwardly resolute. Beatrice entered, carrying 2 cups of tea. She squeezed Elara's arm, her gaze supportive. "You ready for this, Elara?" she asked gently. Elara took a deep breath, letting it out slowly. "As ready as I'll ever be," she replied, her voice steady. Just then, her phone buzzed. It was Marcus. Seraphina agreed to the meeting, he informed her. "But she's bringing her own lawyer, a Mr. Hayes. Is that all right?" "Perfectly," Elara stated, a grim satisfaction settling in. Let her bring her lawyer. It would only make their case clearer. At Mr. Albright's office, Marcus and Miss Holloway were already present, a quiet bastion of support. The conference table was arranged with intimidating precision, thick folders overflowing with financial records, a detailed investigator's report, and Liam's journal, its worn leather cover a stark contrast to the crisp legal documents. Mr. Albright looked at Elara, his expression serious. "Remember, Mrs. Davies," he cautioned, "stay calm, no matter what she says or does. We have the upper hand here. Let the evidence speak for itself." Elara nodded, her resolve firm. Precisely at noon, the door to the conference room swung open. Seraphina swept in, impeccably dressed as always, but her eyes were cold and calculating. Beside her was a tall, sharp-suited man, with an air of practiced arrogance. He must be Mr. Hayes, her lawyer. Seraphina's gaze darted around the room, taking in Elara, then Marcus, then Miss Holloway, before landing on the neatly arranged folders. "What is this ambush?" she demanded, her voice sharp, a clear attempt to seize control of the room. Mr. Albright, unperturbed, gestured to the empty chairs. "Please, have a seat, Mrs. Wallace, Mr. Hayes. This isn't an ambush. It's a chance to resolve matters privately, without unnecessary public involvement." Mr. Hayes introduced himself with a stiff nod, his eyes already scanning the evidence. Mr. Albright met his gaze. "Just so we're clear," he added, his tone deliberate. "Everything we're about to discuss, all the evidence presented, is fully documented and backed up in multiple secure locations. There is no denying the facts." Marcus began the proceedings, his voice calm and professional. "Mrs. Wallace, we've discovered some concerning financial transactions from the firm's accounts." Seraphina's eyes narrowed. "I don't know what you're talking about," she snapped, feigning ignorance, her hand reaching for the folder closest to her. Marcus calmly slid a different folder across the table, directly in front of Seraphina. "Specifically," he continued, "a transfer of $75,000 from one of Liam's business accounts to your personal account, made just 3 weeks ago. That's just the beginning." Mr. Hayes leaned forward, his brow furrowed, beginning to review the printed bank statements. Seraphina, momentarily flustered, quickly recovered. "Those were approved transfers," she insisted, her voice gaining a defensive edge. "Liam wanted me to have that money. He said he wanted me to be taken care of." Miss Holloway, who had been quietly observing, interjected, her voice quiet but firm, carrying an undeniable authority. "Liam was in hospice. Mrs. Wallace, heavily medicated and barely conscious, 3 weeks ago. He couldn't have approved anything, not legally, not ethically, and certainly not practically." Seraphina's composure visibly slipped, her face flushed. He told me earlier, before he got so sick, that he wanted me to be taken care of," she stammered, scrambling for a new excuse. "He promised me." It was then that Elara spoke for the first time, her voice steady and clear, cutting through Seraphina's flimsy excuses. "Is that why?" Elara asked, her gaze unwavering. "He changed his will to specifically exclude you," Seraphina? Seraphina's eyes flashed with pure, unadulterated hatred. The carefully constructed mask of victimhood shattered. "Because you poisoned him against me!" she shrieked, her voice rising in pitch. "You never wanted us to be happy. You always hated me." Elara did not flinch. Her calm demeanor was her shield. "I never said a word against you to Liam," she countered, her voice resonating with truth. "Not once, even when you were cruel to me, even when you excluded me from family events, even when you hid my letters and deleted my messages." Seraphina let out a bitter, mocking laugh, a jarring sound in the quiet room. "Paranoid old woman," she sneered. "You think everyone's against you? You're delusional." Instead of responding with words, Elara slowly reached for Liam's worn leather journal, which lay on the table. She slid it gently across the polished surface, pushing it directly towards Seraphina. Seraphina stared at it, her eyes widening as recognition dawned. Her face, for the first time, showed a flicker of genuine fear. "Where did you get that?" Seraphina demanded, her voice losing its edge of bravado, replaced by a tremor. "From my son's bedroom," Elara replied, her voice quiet but firm. "He documented everything, Seraphina. Every slight, every lie, every time you tried to separate us." Mr. Hayes, whose initial skepticism had been replaced by growing concern, reached for the journal. He began to read, his eyes moving quickly across the pages, his expression growing grimmer with each passing sentence. The silence in the room became heavy, punctuated only by the rustle of pages. Seraphina snatched Liam's journal from her lawyer's hands. "This is ridiculous," she sputtered, her voice high-pitched and strained. "These are just the ramblings of a sick man." He was clearly unstable at the end. Marcus leaned forward, his expression unyielding. "Most of these entries predate his illness by years, Mrs. Wallace, and they are corroborated by other evidence." Miss Holloway opened another folder, her movements precise. "Like the security footage Liam installed last year," she stated, her voice calm but firm. "We have videos of you in Liam's own living room, discussing his illness with your boyfriend, Derek. We have you planning how you would spend his money after he died." Seraphina's face drained of all color, her eyes widening in genuine terror. "You're bluffing," she whispered, a desperate plea in her voice. Without a word, Mr. Albright placed a small tablet on the table and pressed play. The screen flickered to life, showing a clear, date-stamped image of Seraphina sitting on Liam's sofa, Derek beside her, their faces relaxed and conspiratorial. On screen, Seraphina's voice, chillingly casual, filled the room. "Just a few more months," she said, taking a sip from a wine glass. "The doctors say stage 4 is progressing faster than expected. Once he's gone, we'll have everything." She paused, a smirk playing on her lips. "His pathetic mother will get nothing." The man on screen, Derek, let out a low, satisfied laugh. Mr. Hayes quickly reached out and stopped the video, his face a mask of professional dismay. He shot Seraphina a sharp, warning look that spoke volumes. Marcus added, his voice low and dangerous. "There's more. Much more. Weeks of it." From various cameras throughout the house, Seraphina looked utterly trapped. Her eyes darted wildly around the room, from the tablet to Marcus, then to Mr. Hayes, searching for an escape. Then, unexpectedly, she turned to Elara, her face contorting into a desperate plea. "Elara, please," she begged, tears instantly welling in her eyes, though Elara couldn't tell if they were real or merely another performance. "You don't understand. I did love Liam in my way. I got lost, made mistakes." She squeezed her eyes shut, letting a tear roll down her cheek. "You're a mother. You understand forgiveness, second chances." Elara's gaze was cold, unyielding. She remembered Seraphina's whispered threats at the funeral, the casual cruelty in her voice. "You threatened me at my son's funeral," Elara said quietly, her voice steady. "You called me that old woman and said I would suffer at your hands. You stole from Liam while he was dying. You betrayed him with another man, in his own home." Elara leaned forward, her eyes meeting Seraphina's with unwavering intensity. What exactly should I forgive, Seraphina? The last shred of Seraphina's facade shattered, her face contorted with pure, unbridled rage. You think you've won? She shrieked, her voice shaking with fury. I'll fight this all the way to the Supreme Court if I have to. I'll tell everyone Liam was mentally unstable, that you manipulated him when he was vulnerable. I'll drag his name through the mud, and yours too. She tried to stand, but Mr. Hayes gently but firmly put a restraining hand on her arm. I spent 8 years with that boring workaholic man, Seraphina spat, shaking off her lawyer's hand. I earned every penny. The room fell silent, the echo of Seraphina's outburst hanging in the air. Mr. Albright cleared his throat, breaking the tension. Mrs. Wallace, he said, his voice calm and authoritative. This is our offer. You sign these documents, relinquishing all claims to Liam's estate beyond the $50,000 specified in your prenup. You return any stolen property or funds. In exchange, we will not pursue criminal charges regarding the embezzlement, fraud, or the other evidence we've collected. He slid a stack of documents and a pen across the table. Seraphina glared at the papers, her breath coming in ragged gasps. And if I refuse? She challenged, her voice still trembling with fury. Then I will personally see that every piece of evidence in these folders, Mr. Albright replied, sweeping a hand over the piles of documents, is provided to the district attorney. And I assure you, Mrs. Wallace, the district attorney will be very interested in this evidence. Mr. Hayes, who had been quietly assessing the situation, leaned in close to Seraphina. Take the deal, Seraphina, he advised, his voice a low, urgent whisper. You have no leverage here. This is the best you're going to get. After a long, agonizing moment, Seraphina snatched the pen. Her hand shook as she scrawled her signature on each document, her eyes burning with resentment. Fine, she hissed, looking directly at Elara. But don't think this is over, Elara. You've made an enemy today. Elara met her gaze, a deep sadness in her eyes. It was over the moment you decided to hurt my son, she said softly, her voice carrying a quiet finality. Seraphina then demanded a week to move her personal things from the house. Elara, however, was done with concessions. You have until Friday, she countered, her voice firm. 3 days, and you will be supervised by Miss Holloway the entire time. Seraphina's mouth opened, as if to protest, but she clearly saw the unwavering resolve in Elara's eyes. She closed it, a venomous glare her only response. She pushed back her chair with a screech and stalked out of the office, her lawyer following, a picture of defeat. Elara exhaled slowly, a profound sadness settling over her for what Liam had endured, the silent pain he had carried. But beneath the sorrow, there was also a sense of an ending. A chapter closed. Beatrice rushed to her, wrapping her in a tight hug. You did it, Elara, she whispered. It's really over. Elara hugged her sister back, then looked at the stacks of evidence on the table. She began to gather them, a flicker of doubt in her eyes. She wasn't so sure it was really over. People like Seraphina didn't give up so easily. 1 year had passed since Liam's death. A year of profound grief, startling revelations, and quiet rebuilding. Elara stood in the sprawling backyard of her home, Liam's home, watching a gardener carefully place the final stone in a circular memorial garden. It was a serene spot, marked by a polished granite centerpiece. Etched into its smooth surface were Liam's name and dates, beneath which read the inscription, Build with purpose, live with love. Marcus, standing quietly beside her, admired the work. It's beautiful, Elara, he said, a genuine warmth in his voice. Liam would have loved it. Elara nodded, a soft smile touching her lips. Yes, he would have. She reflected on the events of the past year. Seraphina, defeated and humiliated, had taken her paltry belongings under Miss Holloway's watchful eye within the allotted 3 days. She had then fled the state, moving to Florida with Derek, the man for whom she had sacrificed so much. The legal team had ensured she had no further claim to Liam's estate. Later, through whispers in their shared social circles, Elara heard that Derek had eventually left Seraphina for someone much younger. It wasn't vindication Elara felt, but a hollow sadness. Seraphina had traded Liam's genuine love and a stable life for what she believed was money and status, and in the end, she had lost both. She was left with nothing but the consequences of her own cruel choices. "Coffee's ready, Elara," Beatrice called from the patio, her voice cheerful. "And Dr. Eleanor Vance just arrived." Dr. Eleanor Vance, Elara's grief counselor, had become a dear friend, a steady presence through the turbulent months. Inside, the house had been transformed. Elara had made it her own, infusing it with her taste while meticulously honoring Liam's memory. His photos, once subtly removed by Seraphina, were now proudly displayed, his face smiling from every mantelpiece and shelf. The rooms, once filled with unspoken tension, now hummed with light and warmth. Dr. Eleanor Vance, a kind-faced woman with a gentle demeanor, entered the living room, her eyes falling on the framed picture of Liam. "The garden is a beautiful tribute, Elara," she said, her voice soft. Marcus, who had joined them, cleared his throat. "Speaking of tributes," he announced, a proud smile on his face, "the Liam Wallace Scholarship Fund is officially established. We've just finished the paperwork. The first architecture student will receive funding next fall." Tears pricked Elara's eyes. It had been her idea, a way to ensure Liam's vision, his passion for architecture, lived on. Liam would have been so incredibly proud. Beatrice then looked at Elara, a knowing twinkle in her eye. "And what about the other matter?" she asked. Elara smiled. "Yes," she confirmed. "I'm starting a grief support group for parents who have lost adult children. Dr. Vance gave me the courage to pursue it. We're holding our first meeting next month." The idea had blossomed from her own journey of healing. A way to turn her pain into purpose. To help others navigate the impossible path of losing a child. Elara felt Liam's presence in the thriving firm that Marcus now capably led, in the house filled with light and laughter, and in the kindness of the friends who had become her family. His spirit was not gone. It had simply reshaped itself into something tangible, something that continued to grow and give. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Elara found herself alone in the memorial garden. She reflected on the difficult year, the overwhelming grief, the searing anger, the constant questioning of what if. But she also acknowledged the unexpected moments of grace, the unwavering support, and her own growing resilience. Her phone chimed, a text from Dr. Eleanor Vance checking in. As Elara put her phone away, her gaze snagged on an older saved text message. It was from Seraphina, sent months ago, a final venomous taunt. "You think you've won," it read, "but you've lost everything that matters. You're still just a lonely old woman with nothing but an empty house." Elara smiled faintly. Seraphina was wrong. So wrong. She had Liam's legacy, stronger and more vibrant than ever. She had friends who were now family, their loyalty tested and true. She had purpose in the scholarship, the grief group, and in the quiet strength she had discovered within herself. Her house wasn't empty. It was filled with memories, with light, and with new possibilities. She whispered to the evening air, a soft message to her son. "I'm doing okay, Liam. I think you'd be proud." The next morning, Elara woke with a profound sense of peace. She was still Liam's mother, always would be, but she was also Elara Wallace, a woman who had faced unimaginable loss and emerged with her own strength, her own voice, and her own future. Seraphina's cruel threat, delivered at Liam's funeral, had inadvertently set her free. It had led Elara not just to survival, but to the beginning of an unexpected new chapter, building something beautiful and lasting from the ashes of loss.